Hi there, welcome back to the TheSimmersNook, or welcome if you... Today I'm continuing my renovating base game series. In this case I'm renovating base game starter houses, and I do have a few conditions that I set myself for this, so I'm quickly gonna go over them. I have already 4 videos on this series, like this is the 4th video of this series, so if you want to see the rest of them, check out my channel. What are the conditions that I put myself to do this challenge? So first of all, they must stay under 20,000 simoleons. They can keep being starter houses. Another one is that I'm keeping it only base game, and although I wasn't like super successful with that in my first house because it was my first time using debug stuff, and I went a bit crazy, and then I realized that it was not fully debugged. Most of the functional objects there were base game, only some of the decorations were not base game. But on the other ones, I've been trying to be more careful about that so I don't slip. I'm using only base game to renovating this house and debug objects too, so we can at least make it a little bit more homey. And then the third thing that I'm trying, in a way at least, is to keep the base style of the house. But I mean, with this I do have some creative freedom, but I try to like to keep the main shape, maybe some of the main attributes of the houses. Today we're going to Oasis Spring. If you've been seeing this series, you know that I've been like going between Willow Creek and Oasis Spring and doing one of each every time, so I can, you know, vary a little bit on the styles because the houses are pretty different in one world and the other. This one is Sandtrap flat. That's a mouthful. Sandtrap flat. On the talk through of these videos, I usually just tell you a little bit about what's on my mind while I renovate these things. Anything that I might like find interesting for you to know, or maybe what's going on in my mind, what I struggled with, what I didn't, you know, things like that. Let's go with what I did in this house. So, wow, this house is a mess. I find this house one of the ugliest. I don't understand why that platform on the right side of the house is supposed to be. I don't see the functionality. It's really very ugly. However, what I got from the essence of this house, which is what I said that I'm trying like to keep, to, you know, make it look like it's still the same build, is that it's like trying to look a lot more modern than the ones in Willow Creek. And this one's like try to be a lot more modern. So I wanted to go with that, like try to go for a more modern aesthetic. So the last renovation I did in Oasis Spring, Nookstone, I took the greens of the house, and this one was green as well, and I was like, what's going on with the green here in Oasis Spring? Why? And the same happened to me in Willow Creek. I didn't want to use blue twice, and that's like the colors they were using. So in this house, I was like trying to go for a different color scheme. And the first thing that took me like the longest was not the color scheme, because I immediately like decided that I wanted to go for a light wood. Like trying the columns and things, for some reason I just tested the black one and I thought this is perfect. So I struggled for so long with the exterior of this house because I wanted to do something with the roof that was a little bit different. I think I was kind of trying to mimic what it had before, but without it being as tacky as it was before. I usually struggle with roofs, and that's what happened here. Like I tested different types of roof. I wasn't convinced, I wasn't happy, and I tried another one and another one. Moving on, I went for black windows and black doors. At first I thought in the desert maybe having all this black outside can't be a good idea, because you know how usually houses in places where there's a lot of sun go for white or really light colors, and it makes sense obviously, but it was so aesthetically pleasing. I just went for it. For the inside of the house I wanted to keep the modern look. Honestly, I'm pretty comfortable with, because I like modern stuff, although I feel that sometimes it's hard to make the modern stuff look as cozy as others. That's what I was scared, like maybe making a modern house will not make it very cozy looking. However, I'm happy with the result, so we're okay with that. For the inside, I went pretty basic and I left a lot of open space because that's very modern, but also because I really love open spaces when doing houses. It also works better for these types of builds because you save on doors, on walls, and all of that stuff. One thing that made me nervous about the layout of this house is that I wanted to do something special with the kitchen, but I wasn't sure what. I feel that I'm getting better at doing these base game starter houses. Well, I mean, there's renovations for keeping it under 20,000 because now I feel like I get a better sense of how to like do a little bit of everything and then splurge in last minute, you know? The first time I did it, I ran out of money by the time I was like making the bedroom. I feel that this house was really easy and straightforward to furnish. I don't know if it's because, I mean, the modern style leaves us less choices. Straight ahead, I was hesitant about the kitchen, but once I started placing out the counters and all, I had this idea about the island that I wanted in the middle. And you'll see in my builds, I usually go for an island as an eating space instead of putting like a proper desk and chairs for someone to eat. I feel that in The Sims is also a little bit absurd because a lot of times your Sims end up eating in the couch or whatever they can sit. Sometimes they go and sit on the bed, for God's sakes. I feel like we had a lot more space in this house than we do in other builds. I went and splurged a little bit more on the kitchen. I did a bigger kitchen and a bigger island, and I had a lot of fun playing with the shape. I immediately had this thought, there's something that I wanted to do with the island, which was I wanted to add some shelves on the other side to add clutter, but the problem is that that's extra money. That's also, we don't have as much clutter as I would like in base game for the kitchen and all. So I thought that just adding them for spending extra money and not having clutter to put on them was not the best idea. I might do this type of island again in a kitchen where I have more money to get to experiment a little bit more. Keeping up with the outside, I just went for a black style of decor because it is really easy to match. Like, unlike when you go for a wood color scheme that sometimes you have to match all the wood samples and it's hard to get them to match, in fact. With black, it's just so easy because even if it's a different shade of black, it fits. So I use black a lot more than I usually used in these renovations because I use black a lot when I'm building. I really like it. I think it looks good and works really well. Maybe not as black as this house. This house is like very monochromatic. Another thing that was much easier this time, and I think that the last renovation too, is the control of the money. For some reason, I'm just much more in control of the money that I spent this time. And I could even splurge in some things. Like I feel like I added more objects than I would initially. Another thing that's a little different in this house is that I added a little studio space, not completely separated. Like if I had done whatever I wanted with it, I would have probably added a separation there, but the ones that are in base game I don't like. And then I had a lot of fun in the gardening bit. I went a little bit crazy with it, but this one of the main frustrating points of this build is that it has such a big backyard. And when it's a starter house, you can't really like do, oh, let's build a pool out there or something like that, because you don't have the money. What else can you do there? Like you can't put out a gym or any other sort of space that you might think of, because you don't have the money again. So I knew that I wanted to make this backyard look fuller. I knew that you needed at least a little barbecue space with some chairs and all. And initially, I didn't have any idea about what to do with it. I just started playing, which is a lot of times what I do with gardens. Sometimes I do have a specific idea, but 90% of the time I don't. And I just start playing with it and going with it. One of the things I would have done if I had a little bit more money in this build would be adding a lot more plants in the inside. So that will give it a touch of color against the black, white, and, beige tones. So my last moment of every house is going through the debug objects. And I started using debug objects by the time I started doing these houses. So I'm not super experienced with the debug section. It still stresses me out a little bit and overwhelms me because there's so many things and you always have to do like several passes through it. But you can find so many fun things. In this part, what I usually do is if I find anything that I like, I try to place it down. As I was going, I remembered that there was some fences that are actually free, are debug. So I thought this is perfect. I'm gonna put a few fences around and create a little barbecue area. It's such a big garden that I made the barbecue area a little big, even though it's pretty empty. To be honest, I'm really looking forward to renovating houses with some other packs because I think that I might start moving on to the other world's starter houses so I can use that pack as well as base game and start adding more things. So to finish this talk through, I'm just going to quickly tell you a little bit what I did with the outside. So as from the shape of the house, that part that it had before on the right made me think that it looked like you wanted to have like a space to park car. I don't know why it made me think that. I played around a little bit with the asphalt and the grounds we had to make a little space on the right of the house to park a proper car because I know that debug has cars, they're not usable, but it still looks cool to have it there. I tried different things. At the end of it, when I finally found the car and the fences that I wanted to put in the backyard, I was able to make it fuller and nicer. And after I created the fence over on the front side where you will park the car and in the backyard side, it was just really easy to fill it up with palm trees, cacti, and different plants that look like dry, I don't know, plants that look like desert-like. I added some rocks too. The lot is surrounded by rocks, so I feel that it was only right that there were some rocks here and there. I made this little pathway to the entrance too that I wanted to decorate somehow. At the end, I found this pathway stones that I've seen some YouTubers use before and haven't found them before. And I was like super happy and I changed a few things here and there to actually make it nicer and I really really like how that looks. So I definitely know that I'm gonna be using those next times. And I built a little area there in the backyard that it looks a little bit like, I feel like a gardener nook. So maybe the person that lives here or the family that lives here is really into landscaping and that's why they have like this little green spot with different plants. So I'm gonna leave this here. I hope you enjoyed the build. I hope you enjoyed the results. So that's it for today. We only have two more base game starter houses to go. One is in Willow Creek and the other one is here too. That's all. If you enjoyed this video, I have my socials down below. So thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Bye! Thank you.